Hello everybody, I'm George from Ireland. Welcome back to my channel. This video is about President Joe Biden at long last granting permission for Ukraine to use US manufactured missiles in Russia. Up until now, Ukraine has only been permitted by the United States to use these US manufactured missiles in Ukraine, in the Russian illegally occupied regions of Ukraine. That's parts of Kherson, Lugansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and what's the last one? I can't even remember. Obviously, the Crimean Peninsula. Belatedly, Joe Biden's made the right decision. Why? Is it because North Korean troops are there and they're in direct combat, not just as the Russians were claiming, in support roles, logistic roles, engineering units? The Ukrainians have said this, that they actually fought against North Koreans. South Korean intelligence said so. Likewise, says the United States, intercepting Russian military communication, saying, "We'll pretend they're Buryats." Buryats are an indigenous ethnic minority from the Russian Far East, whose what's the word for it? Phenotype is very similar to that of the Koreans, can easily be confused with them, and all sorts of racialist verbiage by Russian soldiers about the North Koreans, who are very hardy, who are trained to cope with very harsh conditions, starvation rations, extreme cold, extreme heat, very terrible fatigue, being kept awake all the time. I mean, beyond what ordinary soldiers are. Life is so hard in North Korea that their people are toughened up anyway, or just die. So they believe in iron discipline, automaton-like behavior, zero flexibility. The Russians had a much, the North Koreans got none because it's a slave state. Feel very sorry for them. I mean, for South Korea, you think was a golden opportunity to annihilate their enemy without facing direct repercussions. So just arm the Ukrainians. Up at this point, the Republic of Korea has refused to arm Ukraine. Would that be too provocative against North Korea, and indirectly against the Russian Federation? But as Russia's taken this step to enlist North Koreans and presumably trade it for also money and military technology, Republic of Korea, well, there's nothing to lose now. The Russians have escalated, so we've got to, or we've pushed around even more. But the other one, the South Koreans hold back because this is still fellow Koreans that they'd be killing, people of their own nationality, and siblings ended up on opposite sides of the 38th parallel in 1945. And then they grew apart. The next generation, they were cousins, and the next generation, they're second cousins. Now they're third cousins, and often quite distantly related. So they don't hold back so much. But you can't blame the North Koreans. They grew up in the most oppressive state in the world, and if they're endlessly propagandized at, anyone will believe it. A highly intelligent person, someone with fantastic critical faculties, could easily follow for this brainwashing, this 360-degree propaganda, the kind of thing that Putin's bringing in Russia. So now, clearly, the Russian Federation is not happy about the United States permitting these long-range missiles to be used, and Russia says there will be an appropriate and tangible response. What are they going to do that they haven't done already? Everything that happened, if you give tanks, that's an escalation. If you give these fighter jets, escalation. Of course, Russia's threats against Ukraine, that wasn't escalatory. Russia's unprovoked and illegal invasion of Ukraine, that wasn't escalatory. The Bucha atrocity, that wasn't escalatory. Targeting civilians constantly wasn't escalatory. Blowing up that dam wasn't escalatory. Targeting clinics wasn't escalatory. Targeting hospitals wasn't escalatory. Targeting schools wasn't escalatory. Kidnapping thousands of children wasn't escalatory. But allowing a democracy to defend itself, somehow that's escalation. So Biden's done it partly because the Democratic People's Republic of Korea has dispatched troops, and you can say, Russia, you brought another country to this conflict, so we've got to raise what we're doing. Another thing is Biden's got only just over 2 months to go. 20th of January, he retires. Now he's worried that Trump will betray the Ukrainians, that he backstabs a lot of people. So let's give the Ukrainians a bit of a fighting chance in the next 2 months. The other thing is Russia's not going to push back too much. Well, what can they do anyway? But they think, well, let's not clear the pitch for Trump coming in, because Trump come in, he's our man, and then we can strike a deal with him. But if we really up the animus right now, maybe we won't be able to have an agreement with Trump, because Trump will think he has to be tough and hit back. So that's another thing which might lead to greater restraint on the Russian side. There was all the grey zone warfare. They've been hacking computer systems, stopping pipelines functioning in the United States for years. obviously spying, influence operations, disseminating disinformation about COVID vaccines, about election results, and things like that, trying to set Americans in deadly hate against each other. Not too much this time. They reckon their man would win anyway, and he did without too much assistance. If they helped him too blatantly, that could actually even redound to his disadvantage. And they're finding it harder to get people to cooperate in the United States because Russia's hyper-aggressive actions around the world. The FBI is very aware of what they're doing, the fancy bear hacking groups and so on. And all their resources are really devoted to Ukraine. Right, so what's going on? What is Russia going to do? Kinetic activity. That's when things actually go bang, or people get killed, or something like that. And they've already started doing that. There's this dry run for blowing up planes with parcels to be delivered, going off in a Polish airport, not killing anyone, fortunately, but they could go on a passenger plane. Could they be undetected by metal detectors or whatever? Even if they are detected and don't even get onto the plane, that could still cause a massive bomb scare, could close down airports, could play havoc with all sorts of passenger flights. So you can actually, terrorists, and obviously Russia's a terrorist regime, you can inflict a lot of damage without spilling a drop of blood, because the precautions people have to take, the things they have to shut down, the extra checks they have to introduce. So some people say, well, let's not do their work for them. Remember 2003, right before the liberation of Iraq, there was a supposed terrorist threat to Heathrow Airport, and the army were patrolling around there. They thought it was had some sort of plot to shoot down a plane with some handheld missile system. They considered shutting the airport, but they say no, because that's doing the terrorist work for them. They want to kill people, but they also want to close the airport. So let's not let them win in that sense. On the other hand, was that foolish because the plane could have been shot down? Didn't happen at the end. So Ukraine's got ATACMS as an army tactical missile system, a range of about 300 kilometers. The Storm Shadow system, come up with the French call it the same thing. Okay, Scalp, because it's long portée, as in long range. But the Storm Shadow, the Franco-British system, it actually relies on some US satellites. And that's why even if Paris green-lighted it, London green-lighted it, they couldn't go ahead unless Washington, D.C. gave them their imprimatur. We're coming up to the thousandth day of the war. So Joe Biden, he's made the right decision, but way too late. This decision could have been made a year ago. How many Ukrainians have been saved, civilians and soldiers, if this happened? The cost would have been raised for Russia appreciably. Would it have brought them to the negotiating table? I mean, there's talk of 1,500 Russian casualties a day, really trying to push forward now intensely before the weather closes in, before Trump comes in, maybe some sort of ceasefire truce then, be in as good a position to negotiate as possible, willing to trade land for other concessions, something like that. Keep all this relentless pressure on the Ukrainians, thinking they're going to crack under the strain. And it's difficult recruiting people. There's obviously people are running away and hiding. There's desertion, so much so the Ukrainian army will let you off scot-free for your first desertion. People are deserting a second and third time and things like that. People are paying for cushy numbers to be in the border guard units, guarding the border of Slovakia places. Some border guard units do get sent to fight in the Eastern Front, though. If you're a border guard in the Western border with like Hungary, Romania, one of those, if you're a bad boy, you're going to be sent straight to the Eastern Front, which could be obviously just a ticket to death. So anyway, up to 12,000 North Korean soldiers there, some of them training in Russia, going into battle, some already in battle. There are rumors there'll be up to 100,000 North Korean soldiers dispatched. Remember, they got an army of over 1 million full-timers. They got a lot of reservists. So that would solve Russia's manpower problems for about a year. If they burnt their way through theirs. But, poorly trained, in a sense, to modern warfare, very low tech, haven't fought a war since 1953, so not that useful. Still got some value, even as a decoy, even if they're just in support roles, even if somebody to guard the Russian borders. There can't be more Kursk incursions, only good for static duties. I don't know. And obviously there's a bit of a language barrier. There are not that many translators around. So the attackers we use in Kursk first is not clear they're going to be used in other Russian regions. Remember, Ukraine occupies some of Kursk, so that will destroy some Russian assets, force them to move further back. Their ammunition dumps, just their units ready to go into action or being rested or whatever. So the thing is, obviously, take out artillery, not just howitzers, but like missile systems, rocket systems, drones. That's what inflicts the damage. Sorry, small arms inflict very few casualties, like under 10% of casualties. So I think you'd like to fight drones as much as possible, because all these attacks on the Ukrainian electric grid, trying to take out the trying to take out the heating system in winter, freeze people to death, break civilian morale. They've tried it. This is the third winter in the row that they're trying it. They could cause major problems. Ukraine's lost up to 50% of its electricity, increasingly connected to the European Union electric grid, particularly in Romania. The one thing is their electric substations, you can take that out. I'm no technical expert. You can distribute generators, which are diesel powered. Then you've got to distribute the diesel. There's always a danger that goes wrong and burns down the whole building. So they're big problems. I mean, how many absolute zero suits and thermal sleeping bags can you distribute to people to keep alive? You can't stay in one of those all the time. There are loads of things, lifts, people get stuck in lifts, water pumped up to the buildings. That's reliant upon electricity. So it's very good news that they've finally done this. If Ukraine had been given all this stuff 3 years ago, this war would never have started. And so it's always just too little too late. At least it's something, because Trump may well cut off all the armaments, all the funding, and so on. He said he is open to a loan. When will Ukraine ever pay that back? Lend-Lease to the United Kingdom. The UK didn't pay that whole thing back for how long was it? Was it 66 years? Ukraine, smaller country in population, smaller economically, much smaller, will be so wrecked after this war, wouldn't pay it back for maybe centuries, probably much of it written off in time. Ukrainians think, let's win the war, worry about that afterwards. So I applaud the decision of Biden. I wish he'd take it much longer. We was also held back. Would it make it more difficult for Kamala Harris to get elected? Trump would no doubt jump on this and say, you're risking the third world war. This is not our problem. Defend our southern border or something. Anyway, thank you for watching the channel. Make sure you subscribe on Patreon, donate on PayPal, georgecallahan79@gmail.com. Goodbye.